Hello everyone and welcome to my 100 subscriber special. Thank you all so much for subscribing, and as I promised, this is my 100 sub special. I figured that since you guys have liked my previous videos on Zack Snyder's Justice League, you'd like this one. So Zack Snyder's Justice League is coming out on HBO Max next year. Now, his version of Justice League will essentially be an extended version of the original. Yes, of course, there are a lot of different characters and plot lines added, and a different tone. And I even have a whole video talking about those differences. But overall, the same story is there. Steppenwolf comes to Earth to use the Mother Boxes to bring Darkseid to Earth, and so Batman and Wonder Woman form a team to stop him. They resurrect Superman and beat Steppenwolf, stopping Darkseid from coming to Earth. But believe it or not, there were plans for not one, but two sequels to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Today I'm going to be talking about what those plans were and the story behind them. But before I do, I'm going to quickly shout out my Buy Me a Coffee page, buymeacoffee.com/ColeHershowski. If you enjoy the channel and want to support me, you can with just the price of a cup of coffee. How often are you going to Starbucks right now anyway? There's a link in the description and on my channel page. Again, that's buymeacoffee.com/ColeHershowski. So first, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the history of the DCEU. So in 2007, as Marvel Studios was filming the first two installments of the MCU, Warner Brothers first decided on the idea to start their own cinematic universe. Originally, they planned on starting with a Justice League movie called Justice League Mortal that would have been released in 2009. However, plans fell through. Eventually, Man of Steel was settled on as the first film in the franchise. At first, Will Beall was going to write a Justice League movie as the next installment, but Warner Brothers didn't really like it, so it was canned. That's when Zack Snyder, who had directed Man of Steel, and David S. Goyer, the creative spearhead for Man of Steel, pitched their idea for a 5-movie plan. Their idea was to have 5 movies encompass the core of the DCEU. Those movies being Man of Steel, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, and a Justice League trilogy semi-based on Will Beall's script. In 2014, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Justice League Part 1, and Justice League Part 2 were announced with release dates in 2016, 2017, and 2019 respectively. So we'll get back to Parts 2 and 3 in a second. So David S. Goyer ended up stepping down during the making of BVS when Warner Brothers didn't like his script, and he was replaced by Chris Terrio, who would rewrite it and later would write Justice League. Now, the original plan was to film Justice League Parts 1 and 2 back-to-back in 2016. But after the rocky reception of BVS, things changed. Filming was put on hold for Justice League Part 2, and the films were renamed to Justice League and Justice League 2. I think you kinda know the rest, so I should mention there is a little bit of a difference between Zack Snyder's Justice League and the original Justice League Part 1. It's pretty minor though. Originally, this movie was supposed to lead pretty much directly into Part 2, but it was changed before filming to be standalone. That means that originally the first movie would end on a cliffhanger with Darkseid actually arriving on Earth. This was changed, so instead Darkseid wouldn't come to Earth, but the League would look through a boom tube and see Darkseid on the other side, knowing that more is to come. So what does Justice League 2 look like? Well, in this movie, the Justice League would essentially be training to take on Darkseid. Apparently, Superman, as of the end of the previous movie, would have been much more like what we see in the comics than in Man of Steel and BVS, kind of completing his evolution. This movie would have also seen Green Lantern join the Justice League, fulfilling the Unite the Seven prophecy, and the rest of the Green Lantern Corps might have also been involved. Green Lantern does appear a little in the first film, but if I had to guess as to how he joins, it's that he hears word from the rest of the Corps that Darkseid is preparing to invade Earth, and so he tells the League. So Uxas, young Darkseid, was shown in the flashback of the first movie, creating the anti-life equation on Earth, and now he's coming back to reclaim it. So they fight Darkseid on Earth, and the ending will shock you! The League presumably has a foolproof plan to defeat Darkseid. I'm not 100% sure on what that is though. There's been talk that at some point in the plan, Cyborg would have harnessed the power of the Mother Boxes to become a near omnipotently powerful being and save the world at the cost of his life. I don't think that was supposed to happen in the first movie, so that's probably their plan here. So basically, Darkseid's whole plan is to use the anti-life equation to turn Superman to his side, and then use him to get the rest of the League out of the way. But a wrench is thrown into his plan when he realizes that Superman has too strong of a will to succumb to the anti-life equation. But he figures out that Lois is a massive part of that, so he goes back in time! I'm not sure exactly how he does this. If I had to guess though, the Flash going back in time in the last movie was probably set up. Maybe Darkseid would have used the anti-life equation on the Flash and used him to send himself back in time. So then he would have gone back in time to the events of Batman v Superman and killed Lois Lane, with rumors suggesting he would have done it in a way that framed Batman for her murder. He'd come back and now Superman could be a victim of the anti-life equation, and he would kill Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. He would majorly bust up Cyborg and presumably at least injure Batman and the Flash. Darkseid would unify the mother boxes and begin to terraform Earth. He'd summon parademons through a boom tube and it'd essentially be the beginning of Nightmare, and that's the cliffhanger Justice League 2 would end on. So, as you might be able to tell, this was supposed to subvert expectations. Given that only 2 movies were announced and they were originally supposed to be filmed back to back, that was part of it. The idea was to use that to set up the expectation with fans that it was only 2 parts long and that Darkseid would lose at the end of part 2. Then everyone's mind would be blown and they would announce Justice League 3 for release in 2021 or 2022. This probably would have been cool, but having the villain win on a cliffhanger and kill half our heroes would have been kind of reminiscent of Infinity War and Endgame would have likely come out a few months before Justice League 2, so it may have been seen as something that wasn't very innovative, especially since Justice League 3's plot was going to involve time travel. Justice League 3 would start off taking place a year or so after the end of the last one. Earth has full-on become the Nightmare sequence with a small resistance being all that's left, as Darkseid travels the universe using the anti-life equation to bring it to its knees. This resistance is composed of Batman, the Flash, a broken Cyborg, and maybe others like Lex Luthor or Deathstroke. So they have a plan where they can send Barry back in time to the events of Batman v Superman and warn Bruce about Darkseid so we can stop him and prevent Nightmare. Zack Snyder has said that he at least wanted to kill Batman at some point, which likely would have been in Nightmare so that it could all be erased later. So Barry goes back in time and then warns Bruce like we saw in BVS, and most of the movie is that Bruce Wayne figuring things out and stopping Darkseid from killing Lois. So then, once he does that, Darkseid returns to whenever Justice League 2 is set, and the League kills him. So there you have the cancelled plans for Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3. What do you guys think of these ideas? I think they're pretty interesting, though obviously just the skeletal plot of a movie doesn't determine if it's good or not. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for daily videos on the franchises you love, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.